Today is the 9th of March 2025. It is Wednesday, 9th of March in the Gregorian calendar and the 10th of Nisan in the Hebrew calendar. 10th of Nisan 5785 to be exact. Jewish people are excitedly preparing their homes for the coming celebration of Pesach, Passover, the first of the spring feasts and one of the most important. Passover, or Pesach, the word for Passover in Hebrew, is a celebration of the miracles God performed in Egypt, written down in the book of Exodus. You can read that in Exodus 12, 1-7 and 11-13. 1 year later, the Israelites were told to make this time a holy convocation, as written in Leviticus 23, verses 5-8. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, is the Lord's Passover. Then, on the 15th day of the same month, there is the feast of unleavened bread to the Lord. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Later on, in Deuteronomy, as the Israelites were preparing to cross over into the Promised Land, Moses reminds the new generation of God's covenant with Israel and the laws they are to keep to remain in covenant with him. In chapter 16, they are told to observe the month of Aviv, later called Nisan in the book of Esther, and keep Pesach to Adonai your God. For in the month of Aviv, Adonai your God brought you out of Egypt at night. You are to sacrifice the Pesach offering from flock and herd to Adonai your God in the place where Adonai will choose to have his name live. Deuteronomy 16, verses 1-2. We can also read in Numbers 9, 1-5, that Adonai spoke to Moshe in the Sinai desert in the first month of the second year after they had left the land of Egypt. He said, "Let the people of Israel observe Pesach at its designated time on the 14th day of this month at dusk. You are to observe it. At its designated time, you are to observe it according to all its regulations and rules." Moshe told the people of Israel to observe Pesach, so they observed Pesach at dusk on the 14th day of the month in the Sinai desert. The people of Israel acted in accordance with all that Adonai had ordered Moshe. In Leviticus 23, after telling the people of Israel that they are to celebrate the 7th day as a Shabbat for Adonai, a day of complete rest, a holy convocation, Moshe was told, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sundown and complete darkness, comes Pesach for Adonai. Clearly, this biblical feast was extremely important, not just to the people of Israel who were brought out of Egyptian slavery, but to God himself. Numbers tells us that the first observance of Pesach took place at Sinai. The first observance in the Holy Land is mentioned in the book of Joshua 5:10. The people of Israel camped at Gilgal, and they observed Pesach on the 14th day of the month, there on the plains of Jericho. Although they were unable to continue while in exile, the commandment to sacrifice a lamb at Passover was observed every year when possible. This changed with the building of Solomon's temple, when Israelites travelled to Jerusalem for the sacrificing of their animal, carried out by the Levitical priests, still following the biblical commandment written down in Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times a year, on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, on the Feast of Weeks, and on the Feast of Tabernacles, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place that he will choose, They shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. In the book of Psalms, Psalms 113 to 118 are known as the Hallel Psalms, and they were sung as the Israelites made their way up to the temple for these biblical feasts. Also the songs of ascent, 120 to 136, written by David. Psalms 113 to 118 are still recited today during the three main feasts. The following psalm, Psalm 137, starts by the rivers of Bavel, we sat down and wept as we remembered Zion, recalling these joyous times while in Babylonian captivity. The rivers here are actually the Euphrates River and its many flowing streams. In verses 5 to 6 they sang, "If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand wither away." For the Israelites to forget Jerusalem and worshipping God in the temple, the presence of the Lord as they celebrated the feasts, it would be tantamount to forgetting God himself. For Adonai has always been at Israel's right hand. Without God they could not survive. After 70 years they were allowed to return to Jerusalem, although only a small group, as we read in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, and also Haggai and Zechariah come from this time. Passover is mentioned in the New Testament 29 times, celebrated by Yeshua himself. Luke tells us that every year Yeshua's parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of Pesach. When he was 12 years old, they went up for the festival as custom required. You can read that in Luke 2, 41 to 42, and remember the story where he remained in the temple, and his parents, with a great multitude of people all going in the same direction, didn't realize he wasn't with them until some time later, and then went back to find him, extremely worried. They found him talking about Scripture, a sign of things to come. John also mentions Pesach in chapter 5, verse 1. After this, there was a Judean festival, and Yeshua went to Jerusalem. Again, in chapter 6, John writes, "Now the Judean festival of Pesach was coming up. So when Yeshua looked up and saw that a large crowd was approaching," verses 4 to 5, "the large hungry crowd was there for Passover," on a pilgrimage to celebrate Pesach and the other two biblical feasts, which are Pentecost and the Feast of Tabernacles. Passover is also mentioned in the book of Acts 12, 3 to 4. When Herod saw how much this pleased the Judeans, he went on to arrest Kepha, Peter, as well. It was during the days of Matzah. Passover is followed by 7 days called the Feast of Matzah, because Jews are told to eat unleavened bread, kosher, without any yeast in it, and that's what we do. So it can sometimes be called, although the Passover would be remembering the Exodus from Egypt, we then go on to eating the matzah, which can be reminiscent of the manna that they ate in the desert. There is much more to say about Passover, but I started off saying that today is the 10th day of Nisan, when Jews were required to sacrifice a lamb. This is the day when they would take a perfect, unblemished 1-year-old lamb into their homes in preparation for the 14th, when they were told to kill it. Not something we do in our day and age. Imagine these people living in one room. They took a lamb into their homes in order to protect it from any injury, so that it would be perfect for becoming a sacrifice for their sins. They would have fed it, washed it, making sure there was no dirt or dust in its coat. The children would have probably played with it, and by the end of 4 days, everybody was thoroughly endeared to it, although it may have bleated all night long and kept them awake. But I think one look into those soulful eyes, it would have been very hard to slaughter it, to roast it, and then to eat it. But it wasn't meant to be easy. Even disregarding sentimental attachment, it would have been financial value for a poor family, a financial loss. But God wanted the sacrifice to be something heavy, meaningful, a life given to atone for one's sins. I ask you to ponder the depth of this, for there was one who gave his life to be a redeeming sacrifice for mankind. The story is an old one. The retelling has removed the significance of the word sacrifice. Those who have celebrated many times have become inured to the events that took place so long ago. But let me not yet get too far ahead of myself, for today is the 10th of Nisan, as I said, and the festivities are still being prepared for, cooking, cleaning, every bit of yeast or leaven being removed from Jewish homes. People travelling to be with family or friends at this important time, even if there is no temple left in Jerusalem. The final destruction taking place in AD 70 by the Romans, and a Muslim mosque sitting on top of the temple today. But today, the 10th of Av, Nisan, let me tell you about this day. On this day, God introduced Moses in Exodus to his laws, and he instructed Moses in Exodus 12 to take an unblemished male lamb of the first year and separate and watch over it for 4 days. On the 10th of Nisan, the Jordan River was divided for Israel, and its waters rose up as if they were a wall. And as our ancestors emerged from the Jordan to take possession of the promised lands, they trod for the first time on the holy soil. And on this day, almost 1,500 years after the first Passover in Egypt, Yeshua entered Jerusalem on a donkey. The next day, we read in John 12:12, the large crowd that had come for the festival heard that Yeshua was on his way into Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Deliver us! Hosanna!" This can also be seen in Psalm 118:25. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Adonai. The following verse in Psalm 118, the King of Israel. More about Passover tomorrow. I wish you a blessed day as you prepare for Easter, which is not Passover. But I believe those who come to believe in Yeshua should really be at least aware of Passover and the significance, because becoming to believe as Christians, we are actually taking on the traditions and the faith of the Jews so long ago. Yeshua himself being Jewish, celebrating those feasts himself, he has become our sacrificed lamb. There is no separation.